Namaste, everyone. My name is Ankur Patel. I'm the Director of Advancement for Hindu University of America, and thank you for joining us for this special webinar on the Upanishadic Dialogues of the Chandogya Upanishad. This dialogue, and I was learning about it as we were prepping, this dialogue actually contains the famous dialogue which introduces the Mahavakya, right? Tat Tvamasi. It's kind of this equation that constitutes the essence of Vedanta and Hindu Dharma. And we're going to be introducing our continuing education course titled Upanishadic Dialogues 1, the Chandogya Upanishad. And our special guest, our speaker, is Dr. Narasimhan Anant. And thank you for joining us early and being on with our great group of people from around the world. If you look in the chat, we have Texas, Los Altos, India, Honolulu, San Francisco, Chicago, Ottawa, Canada, Mauritius, Indraniji from the West Indies, Arcadia, California, San Francisco, and again, I'm in Los Angeles. Kalyanji, president of HUA, will be joining us shortly from Dallas. And Dr. Anantji, I was hoping Kalyanji would give some context about what the course is and where we're at, but if I could just hand it off to you to get us started. And people, if you have comments, questions, put them in the Q&A box. For a question, we'll get into that later. Please keep the chat focused on what our great panelist has to say. And we do have President of Hindu University of America joining us today. Thank you, Kalyanji, for joining us. I gave a brief intro, but maybe if you want to give some context about what this course is, what these dialogues are about, and our webinar for today.
Yeah. Namaste, everybody. A very warm welcome to all of you. And also a very warm welcome to Dr. Narasimhan Anantarangachar, joining us from Bangalore, right? Narasimhanji, you're joining from Bangalore.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Now, we are beginning our series of webinars and open houses, spotlighting various courses that are coming up in the winter quarter of 2022. And today is probably one of the first highlights. This course is called Upanishadic Dialogues 1, the Chandogya Upanishad. We are calling it Upanishadic Dialogues because there are so many dialogues in the Upanishads. And in each Upanishad, in fact, there are multiple dialogues within an Upanishad. But all these dialogues taken together and the various commentaries that have been written upon them by various gurus and acharyas over the centuries, in some regards constitute the core essence of Sanatana Dharma. And we wanted to explore these dialogues not just cursorily, but in depth, and make it available as a series in the continuing education division. So the very first of these dialogues is being featured in this upcoming course in the winter quarter. And each of these dialogues obviously has potential for interpretation and elaboration. So the Upanishadic verses themselves are pretty terse, but various teachers, acharyas, gurus have elaborated upon them. And in their elaborations, there are variations. There is the Advaita interpretation, there is the Vishishtadvaita interpretation, there is the Dvaita interpretation, there is a Swaminarayan interpretation, and on and on. Okay, so there is a different interpretations. Now, it is possibly not very easy to cover all the interpretations of these dialogues in one course, but at least you can begin to get a flavor for these dialogues. So today we are going to introduce the dialogue between. In fact, why not I allow Narasimhanji to introduce the dialogue himself? Ankur, you've introduced Narasimhanji already in terms of his qualifications, etc. Have you?
No, I have not.
Okay, so you're not prepared for it.
Just kind of give a brief intro of the webinar. Let me pull it up real quick.
So, Narasimhan, very briefly, Narasimhanji has had a terrific career in the technology space, but he's harbored a passion for Sanskrit and our traditions and philosophy for a very, very long time. And he has a PhD from. Narasimhanji, why don't you just say a few words about yourself and then begin? Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Friends, welcome to all of you to this webinar. Just to give a brief intro of myself, I have been a technical professional in the software industry, and last year I retired from professional life, and then Sanskrit and philosophy has always been my passion, as my father was a great philosopher, a speaker, writer. And so I got influenced by him, and I have studied in a traditional way various important works pertaining to mainly the Vishishtadvaita school of philosophy, Ramanujas. And in addition, I have also studied the Advaita as well as Dvaita philosophies. And I did my PhD, and the topic was on the Vedas, impersonality of the Vedas. And I have also done the traditional course of Vedanta, Vishishtadvaita Vedanta, in the Sanskrit University in Bangalore. And Sanskrit, MA Masters in Sanskrit and all that. So, and this has always been my passion. And I've also authored some books, and mainly in the regional language. I conduct classes in a traditional way. On almost all days, I have classes. And I give public discourses in Bangalore, of course, being located here. And Upanishads have always been a favorite topic of mine. And I'm conducting classes on the Brahmasutras, commentaries, multiple classes during the week. So I would ask Kalyanji. I mean, I think that's a very brief introduction. And
yeah, so let me start the conversation. In the Chandogya Upanishad, we have this extraordinary dialogue between a father and a son. It is called the dialogue between Uddalaka and Shvetaketa. Uddalaka and Shvetaketa. In fact, one of the characteristics of the Hindu texts, the scriptures, the Upanishads in particular, even the Bhagavad Gita, is that they're all constructed in terms of a dialogue between a teacher and a student. There is someone asking questions, someone responding to those questions. And there is a recognition of the transformative, illuminative power of a conversation between two people, a dialogue between two people, which is at the heart of the Hindu philosophical, intellectual, and spiritual tradition. Is that fair to say, Narasimhanji?
Absolutely. And to add to that, There are also very interesting dialogues, teacher and student, as well as husband and wife,
Yeah.
And father and son. So there is quite some variety. Agnivalkya and Maitreyi, it's very, very famous dialogue between them.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, as a student, we see the seekers who ask questions fearlessly and explore from the point of view of acquiring knowledge, not to test the teacher or the master, but very sincere seekers, fearlessly after in search of truth, basically.
Yeah. In fact, there are, if you go to some of the Tantra texts, there is a dialogue between Shiva and Shakti, for example.
Yeah.
And at the heart of it, see, in the Western world, for example, they revert back to the dialogical method of, say, Socrates, for example.
Yeah.
But long before Socrates, long before Socrates, these dialogues were embedded in the Upanishads.
Yeah.
And the power of the dialogue is that it is illuminative, it is instructive, it is transformative, in the sense that there is some profound inner paradigmatic transformation that occurs in the world of the student through the process of the dialogue. I mean, instead of, you could say, for example, the world view that the student had before the commencement of the dialogue and the world view that the student emerges with after the dialogue are completely different. In fact, it is so different that it is life altering. It is, it shatters the existing assumptions with which a person enters the dialogue. And that is the nature of the dialogue. The most famous among them being the dialogue between Arjuna and Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. But today we are going to focus on Uddalaka and Shweta Ketu. And Narasimhaji, tell us a little bit about what makes this dialogue so important, so unique, and so famous, really, in the tradition of Hindu philosophy.
Yeah. So among so many dialogues present in multiple Upanishads, this particular dialogue is about, it's discussing about the cause of the universe, which is the origination, the original entity responsible for the creation, which is a very, very unique aspect of this also is it does not give a specific name of a deity or anything like that. The word used is Sat, that means existence. So that is something which has attracted all the commentators, and some of them are, in some commentators, they treat it as the most important dialogue, the part of the Upanishads, among all the Upanishads, which is talking about the nature of the absolute reality. This is where we need to look at. So this is one place where you need to look at, and then that learning is taken to other places. So this is something very fundamental according to all the commentators. And it has very important concepts like cause-effect relationships or coordination and things like that, which are also some of the basic tenets of any school of thought. And so from many points of view, if you see, it explores various aspects. And the beauty of this dialogue is through illustrations and what I call experiments, practically like we do in a lab, in a science lab today. The philosophical truths or the concepts are reduced to the empirical level, and then they are taught with examples and experiments. A student is asked to conduct an experiment and then see for directly see the results and then taught the concept, which is actually extremely a convincing way of, we can say a very scientific way. I call it a very Vedantic way of teaching, right? So, I mean, science is nothing but, it is evolved from, I would say, these are all the way of inquiring and then finding the truth, practically seeing it with, valid testimony and things like that. So that we can see in abundance. And in this dialogue, you can see it, very impressively, all that.
So you're saying that there are actually a number of experiments that are embedded in the dialogue itself.
Yes. Like, an example I can give is the cause of the universe is everywhere and it's not seen. So the student is, intrigued. How is it that possible that it's everywhere and we don't see it? So a simple experiment, like, get some water and put some salt into it. And the teacher says, come after some time. And then he says, you taste the water from the middle, from the bottom, from the top. And now get me the salt which you had put earlier. He says, I don't see salt, but I see everything is salty. So I see it everywhere, but I don't see it anywhere. It's a very, very powerful, simple example to prove a very, deep concept. So like this, we see many, experiments and illustrations and all that in this, which makes it extremely interesting, this particular dialogue.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the structure of the dialogue. How long is it? How big it is? How many chapters or verses?
Yeah, the Chandogya Upanishad, as you know, the Veda was a single unit long back. And then a particular point of time, it was divided into 4. And then one of them is the Samaveda. And every Upanishad has, every Veda has Upanishads, like the Yajur Veda and the Rig Veda, Samaveda and Atharva Veda. They have their own Upanishads. The Samaveda, it has this Chandogya Upanishad. It's a part of the Samaveda. So the Veda itself is divided into broadly 2 units, we can say. It's called as the Samhita and Brahmana. And under the Brahmanas, there are further 3 subdivisions. One is called Brahmana itself, then Aranyaka and Upanishad. So this is in one way we can see the last part of the Veda. So Vedanta, it is called Anta. But it is also Vedanta in the sense that the ultimate message of the Vedas is given here. Anta is given as the final decision kind of a thing, in that sense, in Sanskrit. So these Upanishads are that way the most important part of the Vedas. And this Samaveda comes under Chandogya, comes under Samaveda. It has got 16 sections. And the 16 sections are all, again, the dialogue between Uddalaka and Shvetaketu only. And how do we understand the Upanishads? The Upanishads are extremely difficult to understand. They are secret teachings, if that's one of the meanings we can say. And the Sanskrit, it's not the usual Sanskrit that we use, in our daily life, but it's different. And to understand the meanings behind that, we need to resort to commentaries. The earliest commentator is Badarayana, and who has written in the form of aphorisms, which are very cryptic, and they are all like syllogisms. Each one is like a syllogism, we can say, which expresses lofty thoughts in few words, and as minimum as possible. Probably at that time, it was possible for students to understand. As time passed by, it was very difficult. So we have great number of commentaries written on that. And the three primary commentaries, masters like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya, I can say. And most of the others we can trace to one of these primarily. A lot of concepts being common. So these are extremely popular even today, these three, and they explain the aphorisms of Badarayana or sutras in detail, and that is how we understand the Upanishads thoroughly. And there are independent commentaries written for the Upanishads also by all the masters, and that is another way. But this is the Brahmasutras or the aphorisms of Badarayana give us the essence of the Upanishads. What is there a single unit of thought among the Upanishads, among all the Upanishads? And it is the wonder of the aphorisms is that in 500 and around 550 to, or we'd say 600, around that number of aphorism, he is able to convey a system, how a systematic thought is developed and taught in the entire set of Upanishads. So Upanishads are said to be innumerable in one way, and there was a question asked, but 108 Upanishads are quite well known. Out of that, 13 are popular, or even 15. Some of the commentators use, some of them they don't use. So depending on that, around that we can say 10 and 13 and 15. These are the various numbers we see often. And so that is about the Upanishads. And among the Upanishads, even among the 13, the Chandogya and the Brihadaranyaka are supposed to be extremely important, because even the Badarayana's aphorisms, many sections address the sentences or which are concepts found in these two Upanishads. So that way we can say that this has been given a lot of importance by everyone.
Okay. So now let's look at the scope of this course. Can you tell us a little bit about how you have structured the course, and what will happen? What will you take them through over the 11 sessions of the course?
Yeah, since this is the first of the series, and this dialogue also it's quite big, and it has several sections, 16 sections. The idea is to understand the content of the dialogue first, to go through the 16 sections and broadly understand the content of the dialogue itself, and what are all being discussed in this dialogue, and then go into few illustrations and experiments in more detail, and then analyze them and see how the concept taught and the experiment, how do they relate, and what do they teach, and is it making sense, and what is the message that the Upanishad is trying to tell us. And also there are many concepts taught. Like I said, the cause-effect relationship is one thing, and coordination, for example, and things like that. So understand a couple of them and discuss in detail. We will not be the scope, we will not be able to discuss anything in great detail, because of the we have 11 sessions here. Suppose if you take like Tattvamasi, for example, to understand even one Acharya, one master's interpretation of Tattvamasi, will need several sessions. So we will not be able to go to that level of detail, but we will just touch upon, and to understand how multiple interpretations are possible, and what is how they have, each one of the masters have viewed and understood and experienced the teachings of the Upanishads, and things like that. And the final idea is that, we also have to understand the metaphysics and enhance our spiritual intelligence, the spiritual evolution in a way, see how these are applicable today for us. What are the messages that we can take? What are the lessons that we can learn from this?
So that is a very important question,
Yeah.
Narasimhanji. So, clearly in a prior era, in a prior time when life was maybe a little slower, maybe less competitive, maybe there was more leisure to contemplate, meditate, and so on. These dialogues had a unique value. Now, in our contemporary life, with all its emphasis on competition and struggle and trying to get ahead in life, no time to do anything, it's a kind of a rat race. Everybody's stuck inside. So do these Upanishadic dialogues have any value for our time, our age, our era? And if so, how would you articulate that value?
See, I can give one example, like, Tattvamasi itself, for example. If we broadly understand at a very high level also, not going into too much detail about the technicalities of, how the words are interpreted, formed, things like that. One of the masters says that, it is the absolute reality. There is one reality, right? And we are all one reality. Okay. And another master says we are all inseparably associated with one reality. So the important thing is when we say all the selves, the individual selves, if we say the absolute reality and the individual self, they are all equal. They are all belonging to the same absolute. And if we start thinking about this, what is that we are doing in day-to-day life, for example? How does it relate? Why are we under this stress? Why are we worried about something not coming, something we are not gaining, giving fruitful, and we get disappointments, we get joy. Now, how to take these things in life? So when we go to the metaphysics level, the inner life, know thyself was the message that everyone has been giving, right? So, and that is something which will help us to understand the inner self of humans. And when we find that all are kind of equal, when we go to the inner self, and what we see in this empirical world, is transient, and it's not permanent. We are destined for eternal joy, for example, and it'll eliminate a lot of bad feelings, bad thoughts, and it gives us really that kind of a power of the mind. This is about mind and heart, basically, the Upanishads, right? And when we understand that, it gives us great power to be always feeling joyful and happy, and a sense of belonging, a sense of unity, for example. So these are all some of the things. I mean, when we go into a particular aspect and go in detail, probably we will understand in more detail. But very briefly, I'm just telling the metaphysics are something, the realities, when we understand, that's when we will be able to overcome all the day-to-day problems that we have.
Okay. Well, I can speak for myself a little bit here, which is that until I encountered the Upanishads in the Bhagavad Gita, the Prasthanatraya, and so on, the Brahmasutras, in a systematic way, even Hinduism as a whole was very confusing and chaotic for me. I could not put it all together. There seemed to be so many different sampradayas, so many different interpretations, so many traditions, so many practices. It was like a chaotic, almost like a wild tropical jungle, overgrown with so much that it was not coherent for me. In other words, Sanatana Dharma was not coherent. It was incoherent. And so when you encounter a Western criticism that, oh, the Hinduism is incoherent, and our own experience is that it is incoherent.
Yeah.
So we tend to go into agreement with the Westerners and say, yeah, I mean, they're right, it's incoherent. It is so complicated, it is so overgrown, it is so rich, so wild and so varied, and there is so much space and room for so many perspectives. How do you make sense of it, right? And I have to tell you all that it is the Upanishads that begins to bring order in the midst of the seeming chaos. It is the Upanishads, the Vedanta, it is the Brahmasutras, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishadic Dialogues that start to build the framework for understanding Sanatana Dharma. So, I would say there is no one starting point to understand Sanatana Dharma. There is no one starting point. There are many, it is a many-sided, there are many doors, many windows.
Yeah.
Okay. You can enter into the world of Sanatana Dharma through any window, pick up any thread.
Yeah.
One doesn't have to say, oh, I have not read the Rig Veda, how can I go to the Samaveda? It is completely unnecessary and even unproductive to think like that, because you're never going to get done even with the Rig Veda in one lifetime.
Yeah.
But a succinct unit of study, like the dialogue between Shvetaketu and Uddhalaka, that dialogue is a tremendous introduction to the world of the Upanishadic wisdom, and in some measure the foundations of Sanatana Dharma.
And also, see, these are we see in terms of words and sentences is what we read and understand. It needs a deep contemplation, of course, for us to really gain the value out of it.
Yeah.
The truths that we have learned, we need to contemplate and then inculcate in our life. That cannot be explained in words so easily.
Yeah. Right.
But we start at the level of the textual knowledge. But after that, we need to really contemplate and then only apply.
Yeah.
So if I say this sentence is giving me a lot of value, it's very difficult for one to appreciate how does it give that kind of a value, right? So, but when we really understand many times, read it again, contemplate, and see how does it relate to me and things like that, then only we appreciate the real value in these messages. And that way, Upanishads has been the most powerful source of spiritual knowledge, I would say.
Yeah. So there is some chat, concerns being expressed in the chat.
Yeah.
So I want to take up one or two of them.
Sure.
First of all, do people need to study the Bhagavad Gita first and then come to the Upanishads? I would say no, but Anandji, Narasimhaji, what is your thought about that?
I mean, it's not a must, I would say. See, each one gives from different perspective, and the basic teaching is the same in all these sources, I would say. But they are taught in many different ways, and also just by reading one or understanding one will not be sufficient for us. We will have to look at multiple texts. Only then we get an overall view of and there is no end to that, I would say. For 15, 20 years, we've been studying so many texts and so many times again and again. There's no end to that. Every time we find something new,
Yeah,
and something that we had not understood,
that's right.
and
Yeah,
so
I want to,
anything is a starting point, I would
yeah.
say.
So I want to emphasize that point, what you just made, Narasimhanji, which is, I mean, I personally, I started studying systematically in the year 1994, which is, if you add the years, it's 27 years ago, with Swami Dayananda Saraswati of Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. Now, even though from time to time I do entertain the illusion that I have now understood. I have now understood what they are saying. What is surprising and even shocking is that when you revisit a text and you look at a verse and you contemplate its meaning, and it occurs like, wow, how come I missed this all these years? How come I never got this? In 27 years of going through all of this, I never understood this. How is it possible? I mean, how is it that these texts are able to reveal something new, even after so many years of engagement with them? Okay, so this is a remarkable fact about the Upanishads.
Absolutely.
And my own way of explaining it is, the texts really speak to you and me based on our own readiness, our own what we call our adhikara, meaning our preparedness to understand something.
Yeah.
If you are not prepared, you can read something again and again, listen to it again and again, and you miss it. You miss its significance. It just occurs like that's puzzling, and you kind of move on to something else that is more accessible. But then when you are ready, when I am ready, when you are ready, and your own evolution, in your own journey through life, you arrive at a point where suddenly something becomes clear, intelligible, and it is shocking, it is surprising, it is mesmerizing, it is wondrous, and it is like, wow, I never got that before in all those years. And that is the power of these Upanishads, the Upanishadic dialogues.
And
So anyway,
initially, to start with, what I would say is you need what is told in Gita many times, Bhagavad Gita, Shraddha. That is something very, very important, because we don't know when we start with. We need a positive point of view to learn. When we are open to learn, definitely it will be beneficial to us.
yeah, absolutely. And I presume, Narasimhaji, the students will be able to not only challenge themselves, but also challenge you as teacher, and challenge the Upanishads themselves during the course.
So I'm just seeing some interesting questions on relationship between Brahmasutras and Upanishads. So the Brahmasutras are the commentary on the Upanishads, but studying the Upanishads before the Brahmasutras, I think it will be much more difficult for us, because Brahmasutras is addressing all the Upanishads put together. When we study a Upanishad, we will go into one Upanishad, but we will not go through. So that way, Upanishads, but when we study the Upanishad, we can relate to the commentators. Basically, we are understanding Upanishads from the commentaries. The commentaries of Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhvacharya are based on the Brahmasutras. So there is a direct link we are having. So we are not directly studying the Upanishads now, but we are studying through the commentaries of the masters, which are based on the commentaries which are based on the Brahmasutras, I would say.
Yeah. So here is another question. Are we going to go through all the 16 sections of the dialogue between Uddalaka and Shvetaketu, or is the course going to be focused on comparing the commentaries, Vyakhyanas of Shankara, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya?
No, I think the first level, we will go through the 16 sections and understand the content of the dialogue and explore, one or two messages, illustrations, or experiments. Because if we start going into the commentaries, comparative study of the commentaries, they are very huge commentaries, and we will not be able to do justice to any one master in a course, with a short course like this.
Yeah. Okay, what day and time is the course? So let me share with you the course itself. I'm sharing my screen. You should be able to see it in just a minute. Are you able to see the screen? Narasimhanji? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the course, Upanishadic Dialogues 1, the Chandogya Upanishad. And, we're offering a $100 discount for the next 3 days. So if you register immediately, the price comes down to $200. Immediately, as in before November 22nd, which is midnight of Monday. You select winter 2022. Here are the dates and times of the course. It is on a Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, 12 noon Eastern time, Sunday mornings, starting on January 16th, ending on March 27th. That is the course. You can see more description about the course here. So that's the course, and it is certainly meant for serious students who want to get a deep understanding of Sanatana Dharma through the lens of some of these Upanishadic dialogues. Let's pick up some more questions. Chaudhry Patel, CBS Patel, does it mean the majority of people who are not seekers are asking questions? All this Jnana Vidya is not available, has no use? No, that's not true at all, CBS Ji. It is available to all, if for everybody who is interested. And the Upanishads give you a very structured way of exploring these topics. Otherwise, on our own, we'll be kind of lost. How do we get access to old Vedas in Sanskrit? Well, there are a lot of ways of getting it. Does this course fall under the texts and traditions areas of study at HUA? Well, let me tell you where it falls. We have placed it under the Hindu Studies Foundations. So the Upanishad series is going to be in the foundations because it is really sort of very central to understanding Sanatana Dharma. What would subsequent courses cover? Well, we're gonna systematically explore many Upanishads, Upanishadic dialogues. Maybe take dialogue by dialogue, pick it up one by one. So here is a question: how much homework or time commitment other than the class will be needed for full-time working people? Good to know before we starting the class. Narasimhanji, over.
Yeah, generally, at least for a 1 hour session, 2-3 hours of effort would be definitely needed, I think, because then only we can do some justice. First, some of them maybe they have already studied some and they may not need so much, but always, as you said, also Kalyanji, every time we read it, we have new experiences, we have new learnings, and so it's always useful to, when we study multiple times, very closely in a concentrated way, and so that definitely needs some effort. So I would say 1:2 would be expected, at least.
Okay.
That would be beneficial.
So here is a question: will it require knowledge of Sanskrit, or can we get through it without deep knowledge of Sanskrit?
Not a must, but knowledge of Sanskrit would definitely be helpful. But what I plan to do is, though I may be mentioning some Sanskrit words, I also plan to give a glossary of Sanskrit words and the meanings, that are there in the interpretations and all that.
Yeah.
So generally, when explaining, I would try to stick to English as much as possible.
And I would also say that all of us should be building our own dictionary of our vocabulary in Sanskrit. We should appreciate and understand at least 108 Sanskrit words that are somewhat at the heart of Sanatana Dharma, and not be carried away by simplistic English renderings of those words.
Yeah.
These words are very unique to Sanskritam, and therefore unique to Sanatana Dharma. And building that vocabulary for ourselves would be a basic commitment, for everyone who wants to appreciate and understand Sanatana Dharma. But there is no particular prerequisite that's required for this course. You can come in quite freely, and you'll get a tremendous amount of value from the course, just as it is, and it'll open up a doorway, a window into much deeper study within Sanatana Dharma. Okay, so here is another question. Let me ask you another question here. Simplification English. Okay, IST timings. IST timings are simple, sir. So we are saying the course begins at what time did we say it was? We said it is
8:30
it
p.m.
is 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, which will be 9 p.m. India Standard Time. 9 p.m. India Standard Time on a Sunday, and that's quite accessible for India-based people. Now, of course, if you're in Australia, etc., it'll be very late in the middle of the night. That may not work. Will those conjugations be explained? Narasimhaji, you want to take that?
Not in too much detail, because explaining them in English would be quite a task. So, but how they are treated, and the meanings, and probably multiple meanings to that, and that I can explain.
Yeah. Okay, here is a question from Krishna Kashyap. He's asking, what is the importance of this particular dialogue between Shvetaketu and Uddalaka? Why have you chosen this dialogue as the first one to explore, not some other dialogue? What makes it special?
I think we talked about it initially, this importance of this dialogue. Because this is, according to the masters, they, especially the earliest commentator, commentary that is available, Shankaracharya. This is the one this dialogue is the one which is exploring the fundamental, the reality, the nature of the reality. And like I said, the uniqueness of this dialogue is that it doesn't mention any name. It just says existence. So that way, it is being taken as a very important dialogue. And that is from the concept point of view, the cause-effect relationship or the coordination. Many very important concepts of philosophy are found here. And all the complete metaphysics we can find being addressed here. And that too through illustrations and examples, and very simple and to understand. And so there are many, I think, good aspects of this dialogue, which make it very interesting and attractive to everyone.
Yeah. So there's a question in the Q&A box which says, can you please give an example of a fragment of this a conversation between Uddalaka and Shvetaketu, an example that would whet everybody's interest in this dialogue.
So, like, you know, about the self, for example, in one of the questions he is talking about. And he says there are 16 parts in a self. Now, I'm not going into detail, but I'll just give quickly. And he says, how do we know that? And one of them is the breath, you know, the fundamental breath called prana, for example. And he says, how do you know that all these are there? And say, I'll show you how prana exists. And he says, don't eat for 15 days. Okay, he makes him fast for 15 days and come and asks him, you know, now why don't you recite the Vedas that I have taught you? He says, I don't remember anything. Then he says, don't go and eat nicely and then come back and then recite. You know, then he's able to recite extremely well, everything by heart. So, you know, this is, I'm just giving an example of a dialogue. I'm not going into what is the message that is given here that we will analyze during the course. You know, we will pick 2 or 3 and then probably depending on the time availability and then analyze it in detail. But the way of teaching is so nice that every concept that is taught, you know, like, you know, the whole world comes out from nothing. How can I believe that? You know, and we don't see that. So he shows a tree and a seed, bring a seed from that, break it into half, and, you know, break that seed. What do you see inside the seed? He says, I don't see anything. From this nothing, this whole tree of branches and, you know, leaves and flowers and fruits has grown. You know, so examples like that, and to teach very important concept, we find them. And then when we analyze in detail, you know, what is the message being given here? How does it relate to the concept? You know, it makes it extremely interesting for us to study.
Right. So, so in that particular example, right, the what is being explored is the relationship between food and the mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Food and the mind.
Absolutely.
You know?
So important today.
And how the mind starts to deteriorate.
Yeah.
When there is no food in the body. So the connection, so it's an exploration of the mind-body interface.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you know, in some sense, you could say that the Upanishads contain a deep exploration of the nature of consciousness, you know, to use an English word, consciousness.
Yeah.
You know, that which exists beyond the human mind, but whose existence is so central to the life process, to our experience of everyday life, all our actions. In fact, even the mind, if it is not illumined by consciousness, it fades away. It is nothing. It is just a mechanism. So, you know, this dimension of exploration of consciousness in terms of first-person experiments. First person. In other words, you're not experimenting on a external thing like a rat or an animal or a substance outside. The experiment is on yourself. You're experimenting with yourself.
Yeah.
And in this kind of first-person experimentation, you slowly begin to discern the nature of the reality of consciousness, which is fundamental to the Hindu framework of thought. And
to prepare ourselves to absorb such concepts, the concept of sattvic food, for example, the vegan, you know, menu, what we say today is quite popular everywhere. No, that's that we can find in this also. I mean, there are many such lessons we can learn from that, basically.
Right. Okay, so let's see. Are there any more questions? There will be recordings. I saw a question about recordings. Yeah, every class will be recorded and loaded into the learning management system. And you can always revisit the recording, reabsorb it, formulate questions. So there'll be opportunities to reflect on the classes afresh. Okay, what else? Let's see. So there are 16 sections, and each section is slightly different in length, right? In terms of the number of verses, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Some sections are slightly longer, some sections are very short.
Yeah.
But each section of the dialogue introduces a new idea, and it builds and builds and builds until finally Shvetaketu says, "Now I have understood." Right? At the very end, he says, "Oh, now I got it. Now I got what you're saying. I didn't get it all this time. Now I got it." And that's the end of the dialogue.
But he doesn't leave unless he understands. So
That's right.
he keeps pursuing.
Yeah. Now, there's a question here saying HUA should publish 108 words. I mean, that's a great idea. I think we probably will at some point in time, but each one of us individually should also develop these, our own vocabulary, Sanskritam vocabulary. Okay, it's very, very important. There's no Sanatana Dharma without Sanskritam.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? There's one more in the Q&A box that I just saw. Is there any recommended text for the course? Are you planning on inviting people to buy a particular text, Narasimhaji?
Buying, I was thinking, but I don't know whether it's available everywhere. People from different parts of the world might join here and all that. So I have seen few good books which can be downloaded free. So I will share those references.
Okay, so there'll be you'll be providing PDFs for everybody which they can use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, great. So they don't have to buy a text.
Yeah.
Yeah. For people who want to hear a sample lecture to decide if this is for you or not, I think what you should do is register for the course, enter the course seriously, and engage with it. And if you find that you're not adequately engaged and it's not meeting where you are, you can talk to us about maybe withdrawing from the course. But I'd encourage, 11. It's only 11 sessions. It's 1 quarter, 3 months. You should be able to give that much time to the course to allow it to really make a difference and come alive for you in a way that it becomes relevant and meaningful. Are there other Upanishads that are planned? Yeah, Mandukya, Mundaka, Brihadaranyaka. We're not going to cover an Upanishad from beginning till end. I think that is not very practical. But what Narasimhaji has done is he's picked out a particular dialogue between two people. Now, even within the Chandogya Upanishad, there are many dialogues, right, Narasimhaji?
Yeah, Satyakama's dialogue, and many such dialogues.
Many such dialogues.
Yeah.
So here, what he has done is he's carefully selected one dialogue, one conversation that goes on and on over 16 sections. And he will be unfolding that particular dialogue. Okay, so here is a question. Suman Datta is asking, how are students graded for completion of the course? I can tell you in general how they are graded. One element of grading is attendance and class participation. So you should participate in the class and you should engage with the conversations of the class. The second part of the grading will be based on, generally speaking, one essay that you write. Sorry, my phone is ringing. one essay that you should write about 1,500 words, which is quite easy to write based on what you learned from the course and so on. That'll be the whole grading framework. Behind the paywall, Jugal Malani ji is asking, is there a plan to make this available behind the paywall? No. We want to preserve the integrity of the student-teacher dialogue, the interaction. In fact, one of the commitments that we have made in Hindu University of America is that all courses are constituted inside of a dialogue between teacher and student. And it is not like a passive listening to a recording. It is not the passive reading a book on your own, but rather live engagement with a qualified teacher who has himself or herself deeply studied these texts over many, many years. And we believe, as a matter of principle, that there is something available in the conversation between a teacher and a student that is uniquely not available when a student is on their own, reading or listening and so on and so forth. I mean, that's one of the principles of this entire structure of these courses. Yeah. Okay, subsequent courses, please watch out. Okay, 2 or 3 hours of outside study is required. What will you be doing during this time? Yeah, Narasimhaji will be assigning readings. You'll be reading, you'll be reflecting on that. You'll be coming back with questions. Sometimes they give reflection essays. Those are some of the things that will be happening. Yeah, other Upanishads, yeah, definitely in the future. Like, for example, one of my favorite dialogues, Upanishadic Dialogues, is the conversation between Nachiketa and Yama. Yeah. So it's an extraordinary dialogue, really speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
And we will be doing those, we'll be doing Upanishadic Dialogues 2 and Upanishadic Dialogues 3 and so on and so forth in the future. Essays are all in English, no requirement of Sanskrit. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. Any other questions, anybody? Otherwise, we have been a little over an hour. Ankur, you want to wrap up by inviting people to register and so on?
Yeah, so please do consider enrolling in this course. I dropped the link earlier. Let me find it again with the details. Again, we're going to offer a $100 discount if you register by tomorrow evening. So please do consider enrolling. And as was mentioned, the interaction between the faculty, the professor, and this is so crucial. And it's always exciting and inspiring to see so many people from across the world as Hindus engaging in this kind of learning. So please do consider enrolling in this course. I dropped the link in the chat. We'll follow with an email, including the recording of this webinar that you can share with your friends. Please send questions, any questions you may have. I hope we did answer all the questions during this webinar. Thank you all for joining. Hope to see you in one of the HUA courses in this upcoming quarter. Thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to give to our attendees?
No, I would like to say that, offline, like on email, I would be available anytime for people to send me questions and interact. And I mean, a lot of more interaction and questions would make it, more beneficial for everyone.
Wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Namaste. Dhanyawad.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.